So today is a very special episode because we're going to be interviewing someone really interesting. But why interviews, you ask? So far, you've probably just been seeing me in this series and part of the Zen Zany team. But what I wanted to do was branch out and also show you guys some interesting folks living in Shenzhen, in China, where we are, and doing interesting things in media and the creative industry. We're actually going to be asking them 9 questions. The first bit of my name could actually mean 9 in a number of different numerical systems, including Arabic. So in a way, I have a special relationship with the number 9. So I'm going to be asking all these interesting people 9 questions, and you'll see one interesting person in each of these interviews. So today I'm going to be interviewing Grace Zhang. She is the director of Startup Grind in Shenzhen. And what is Startup Grind? If you don't know, Startup Grind is actually a network that supports startups by bringing to them expertise from mentors, from different kinds of speakers and C-level executives to really create a whole ecosystem of support, advice, mentorship, and experience sharing. So Grace has actually taken Startup Grind to some great heights in China over the past few years, and she is going to be sharing with us some interesting things about herself, about Startup Grind, about her philosophy of creating a supportive network for startups. So let's talk to her. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nausheen.
Would you please, for the benefit of the audience, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do in Shenzhen, what drives you, and just a little bit about you.
Hi, audience here who watches Nausheen's awesome show. First of all, I started in film as well, and then I got into new media. When I was in Chicago, I became a tech reporter. So I got a little bit of taste of startup community in Chicago, which I really loved. I really loved the companionship, and then the spirits where everybody just talks to each other and helps each other, inspires each other. So when I came back to China, to Shenzhen especially, at that time, Shenzhen didn't have a kind of community scene. We didn't have many communities here also kind of focusing on startups. So I was very fortunate to work with Y Combinator to kind of start a series of startup courses, offline courses here in Shenzhen, and people really liked it. And at that time, I was approached to Startup Grind Shenzhen, the former director here in Shenzhen, and he approached me and asked me if I would like to join Startup Grind Shenzhen. I said absolutely yes, because that's what I wanted to do. I will always have this passion to get people together and then to get their ideas flowing, and then to have this comfortable, friendly environment where you could freely share your ideas and sometimes your fears, and that's very important aspect too to entrepreneurship and growing together. And then together we kind of cultivated this healthy environment where we could feel free to contribute. That's it's just my background. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You already answered question 1, so you have 8 more to go, which is a lucky number in China.
Yes.
So the second question is, what do you believe in?
I believe in collective forces and collective wisdom. I would think that no one can be everything. No one can know everything. And then especially in this stage, in order to be qualified at your positions, that you need to be really specialized in this certain area. So that's why when we want to create great things, that people need to work together and share their knowledge. And also we need to create this environment where we are comfortable to try. We're comfortable to experiment ideas. That's why we have open labs now, and then we have open source platforms now where people share their knowledge. I think this is happening also in Shenzhen, and I'm glad to see it.
But in reality, have you seen people hesitant to share knowledge?
Definitely people from different experiences and backgrounds, they have different mindsets when it comes to sharing knowledge. But what I feel right now is I think this is gradually changing. This is gradually moving to a new direction. Like imagine every individual is a tree of knowledge, and then they own the knowledge like growing on this tree. Like imagine that. And then they realize, I think as individuals, that they grow better in the forest, not as individual tree at a like desert.
That's an amazing analogy. I love that analogy. Now we're going to ask some interesting questions about Grace, the person.
Sure.
So what was the last really awesome or really challenging or really intimidating thing that you set your mind to do, and did you end up doing it?
Chinese traditional dancing.
Wow.
I continued for, I think, 3 to 4 months now, and then now I can do a streamlined like dance moves, and then I can do all the stretches, not perfectly, but all the like the leg stretch and the back stretch. I think what I learned is never underestimate the power in small steps.
If there was one job that you would do without ever getting paid, what would it be? That's part one of the question. And part two, what job would you never ever do even if you were getting paid, whatever you asked for it?
I think I'm already doing the things that I'm willing to do without getting paid. I think this is one thing I told myself, that being able to do it is already some kind of income for me, like some kind of fulfillment for me. I'm not gonna do like even I'm getting paid as accountant. Like I would never think that myself as a good accountant. I guess like I always is a kind of like make mistakes and learn and then pick up myself and do it again and do it better kind of person. But for certain jobs, there's very, very little tolerance for mistakes. Accountant being one of them.
I've seen you in the public space. I've seen you be a moderator, be a presenter, and you've never made a mistake.
Just kidding. Of course you can make mistakes, but I don't want to make the same mistake over and over again.
It's a good segue to our next question, because we're talking about making mistakes and learning. So the next question is, what is the hardest lesson that you've learned specifically doing business in China?
I think it's just to be drastically open-minded. That's not the hardest lesson, I guess. It's just it naturally comes to you when you do business in China. As I said, like China develops very fast and has been developing very, very rapidly. And every decade you get different situations. So like when you do business with people from different backgrounds, and they carry different stories and experiences. And then they don't necessarily just naturally align with yours. For example, like there are really, really good businessmen here in Huaqiangbei, and then they sell parts to like every part of the world, and then they make a lot of money doing so. But they don't necessarily go to the same schools that you go to or get educated like you did. But they carry a brilliant set of business skills here, and also they have more practical experiences in China than you do. And then you would want to work with these people, but because they are also inspiring, they're very inspiring, they're sharing, and then they're open-minded too, because they have to do like business with a lot of people with different cultures. And then so they have the things that you don't have, and maybe you wouldn't be able to learn by yourself. It's something that we shouldn't ignore.
What you're essentially saying is that there's so many different kinds of cultural backgrounds and business backgrounds that people come from, and there's so many different ways of judging and evaluating business acumen and skills. It's not just the degrees that people have or the experience in multinational companies or on Wall Street or whatever, but it's...
Yeah, I think it's just to endorse the idea that everyone has its germs in them, and then your job is to discover them, not to kind of just to make early judgments.
So the question is, what does China mean to you?
China means to me home, definitely, because I grew up here, was raised here, and then also growth. Like China now, because it develops so fast, we keep saying this, it created a lot of rooms for people to create their own jobs and to find their own positions in this country. So in China, you could still find spots or niche markets or not too much occupied, and then you could create your own place in that. So I'm very glad that when I came back to China, that the concept of community was still very new, was relatively new. So I could bring my learnings from Chicago about community to Shenzhen, and I localized it with situations like applying to here. Like we kind of made our communities the top brands of community in Shenzhen. So that's something that maybe I couldn't have done in like maybe Chicago or maybe in Beijing, and then in those like more matured systems.
I mean, and it's a very interesting comparison, right? So like when I was in New York, for example, it was very easy to find any kind of community, whatever you wanted. If you were into clowns, you'd find a clown community. Right. It's a very interesting way of looking at Shenzhen, where we don't have a lot of like what you're calling a mature social system, but it really kind of becomes brimming with like with possibilities, and you can pretty much do what you want to do. So that's a very cool and very bright way of looking at it, and not looking at the fact that it doesn't have it, but it's like, okay, if it doesn't have it, you do it, you create it.
Yes, hate doing counting.
Yeah, I thought that would be the answer.
Yes.
Accounting.
Yeah.
Keep Grace away from accounts.
Yes.
So are people inherently good or inherently evil?
I'll answer this question in two folds. So one fold is just from a personal point, is that I believe that people are inherently good, because from my own experiences that I have been treated well from people, not only closer ones, but also strangers from different countries. On another aspect, I believe that people are multi-layered. And that's why I don't judge people just by their one aspect of them, or just by like one appearance or one interaction.
What would you like to ask me?
Oh yeah, I would like to ask you a lot of questions, like how you can be so awesome in a challenging country like China.
I made sure that she would say this stuff.
Yeah.
We made sure off camera.
The different things that you realize now that you didn't think of before you came to China.
Before I came to China, I had no idea what to expect. We didn't really have a lot of time. I was finishing my degree in New York, and China just happened. And just being here, I think I've realized that life can be really a lot of things, and it can be almost anything that you make it out to be. A lot of life is kind of taking in your surroundings and figuring out what can you change, what can you live with, what can you not live with. And I guess the hardest part of that is what can you not live with that you cannot change, because then
that's deep.
Yeah, that's painful. And then you have to really change yourself, because you can, I feel at least that you can always change yourself if you cannot change the surroundings. For the first 3 years that we were in China, we lived in this really tiny apartment that I hated. I was just so unhappy in it, and I think I made myself more miserable than I had to be. And now I look back at it and I realize that, you know, I could have made that situation better. I was still in a new country, and it was still different and nice, but the fact that I had to live in this tiny little place in a very not a very nice neighborhood that I thought of as nice, you know, I made that reality kind of for myself. So I think a lot of just being here for 4 years has taught me all those things about, I guess, layers to life, layers to living here. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was our 9 questions. Thank you for being a part of our video series, and it was just a pleasure and just joy talking to you.
Likewise.
And yeah, I loved hearing all about, you know, your life and your points of view, and yeah, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, likewise. I look forward to watching your videos. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks so much for watching. I hope that you liked that interview with 9 questions for Grace. If you liked it, or if you didn't like it, let us know in the comments below. And please remember to subscribe to our channel so that you can stay tuned for more interesting content on behind the scenes, what we do here, our little adventures in China working as a media company. And that's it from us today. Hope you had fun, and see you guys next time. Bye.